Let's talk about where VMware came from, and let's talk a little bit about what we think is happening next and where we're going, and what's going to happen next with you and your applications and your users, or colleagues, as now I'm told by Spencer to call them. So VMware's famous, really, for bridging across silos of innovation. That's what we do. There's silos all over our industry, and silos continue to pop up as someone has a really cool new idea and a new way to do things, or a different way to do it to someone else. And where we've differentiated as an organization is as those silos have popped up, we've come across with a way of bridging across those silos and making it much easier for you to deal with all of them. So when you're looking at servers, and we wind back to the late 90s, and the server wars were heating up, and you've got to choose whether you're going with this model of x86 server or that model of x86 server, or whether you're going with Windows or whatever, we step in and we bridge across all server types with a hypervisor. And frankly, owned that space, which was nice. And that fueled and gave us the money to move into doing the next part of the big plan. So the next part of the big plan was on end-user computing. And Spencer's covered this in detail with random and obscure movie references already. But basically what it was here was we came up with a focus about 5 years ago that was different. And everyone says they're different. But it was different in the way that Spencer just explained. We knew it wasn't about managing things or devices. We knew it wasn't about locking down things or devices. We knew it wasn't about VDI. We knew what it was about delivering applications and data to users anywhere on any device. And that's been our focus. That whole consumer simple, enterprise secure has been something we've always talked about. The one thing you'll never hear us talk about is enterprise grade in end-user computing. Because, to be honest, why would anyone want enterprise grade end-user computing? It's rubbish. I want consumer grade end-user computing. And most enterprises struggle to reach consumer grade end-user computing because the enterprise grade one is horrible. So what we do there is we help bridge across all of those types. We don't care whether it's Windows, Mac, Chromebook, Android, iOS, VDI, whatever. It's about getting applications and data to users securely in the fastest possible way. That's workspace one. When we look at networking was becoming, to be honest, the thing that was stopping us cross that bridge into private cloud, software-defined data centers, public cloud, just general agility in what we're doing in data centers and in IT. We were being held back by physical networks, and more importantly, by the people who ran physical networks. And so the obvious answer to any problem in IT, as you know, is to build a layer of abstraction on top of it and abstract yourself away from the problem. And so that's what we did with virtualized networking. And so with NSX and the virtual cloud network, we now allow you to run one policy, one network across pretty much any type of physical networking, at the same time creating all those layer 3 to 7 services that you know and love and want out of a networking layer. Bridging silos. And then it was about, let's get to the cloud. Now, if I went and talked to a different kind of conference, a lot of them are already in the cloud. I'll go and talk to AWS reInvent. It's a whole different audience to this one here. But businesses struggle to adapt to adopt the cloud, as you've heard this morning. And so we talked 5, 6 years ago about this concept called hybrid cloud at VMware. And people looked at us like we were morons, mad, didn't quite get the idea, weren't sure what was going on. Or, of course you say it's going to be about that because you sell private cloud stuff, was the other answer I used to get quite a lot. When in fact it was not that. It was the fact that I spend my days not talking to vendors or living in the world of Amazon conferences or sitting around going to serverless conferences. I spend my days talking to real CIOs fixing real problems for their customers, and also cool new startups building new exciting things. And all of them were saying that they can't do everything they need to do in the public cloud in most cases. There were some bits and pieces they had to do on premises. And it's getting worse, actually. There's a European banking legislation. If you work in banking, it's going to get really interesting because as a banking institution, you're going to have to demonstrate that you can remove yourself from any public cloud that you're using. But not only that, you have to demonstrate and test it. So try doing that with the stuff you've built in Amazon, for example. So these are putting new pressures on people as maybe, okay, those industry regulators don't quite get cloud, but until they do, you've got to deal with it. So we can't all suddenly jump into the public cloud. And so for our next act, after helping people bridge the private and public cloud with our hybrid cloud approach, we're now talking about this multi-cloud era. Because now when I sit opposite CIOs, they tell me they're going with a multi-cloud strategy. Well, a lot of it's because they're used to multi-sourcing. They're used to saying, okay, fine, I always had 2 vendors for networking and 2 vendors for hardware and 2 vendors for whatever, so I'm going to have at least 2 vendors for cloud. And so I quite often sit across CIOs, and the 2 answers I always get back are, we're multi-clouding across Amazon and Microsoft. Yeah, we're going with Azure and we're going with Amazon in what we're doing. And that seems to be a reoccurring trend. But increasingly, they're actually realizing what they're doing. And I had one recently kind of had this dawning moment during the meeting we had, was he realized that what he was building by replatforming all his applications to Amazon or to Azure, what he was doing was building himself 2 brand new silos that were the same as the silos he had when he was trying to fight between IBM and Unisys in the early 90s. Now, a lot of people are doing that, saying that's fine. We get a lot of value out of that. In fact, that fits entirely the business model for us. We've done a lovely Wardley map. We've proved that moving everything to Amazon and not doing it ourselves makes a lot of sense, but not for everyone. So for us, we're seeing this multi-cloud era, where the customers we talk to are dealing with an environment where they're going to have to support AWS and Azure, and maybe Google Cloud, and IBM Cloud, and you name all the other clouds they feel like they should or shouldn't use. And the ability for customers to have choice between that is really where we're focused at VMware. We're in an exciting moment because there's a lot going on. So, I mean, God, I'll be standing up here in 10 years' time saying we're at an exciting moment in IT, there's a lot of change, much as I would have done 10 years ago and I will do in 20 years, right? There's always going to be a lot of change. What's interesting, though, is how fast it's changing and what's happening at the same time. Before, if I rewind to the 90s, and some of you look like you remember IT in the 90s, there was sort of one phase or one fad or trend every 2 or 3 years, and it was kind of something you could cope with. Oh, now we're doing web. Oh, great, that's cool, let's web everything, right? At the moment, we've got 4 things going on, maybe 5 or 6, and these cycles are maybe lasting 3 to 6 months of excitement in some cases, so it's difficult to deal with. We have cloud, mobile, AI/ML, and edge and IoT as being the standard things that you have to talk about with any organization when you're asking about what are they doing to either ignore completely or take advantage of these strategies. And specifically, no one of them is a strategy, by the way. AI is not a strategy. Blockchain is not a strategy. They are little bits and pieces and tools that you might use to do that. And blockchain's my favorite example of a solution looking for a problem in every possible way. Okay? It really does make me giggle. There's a fantastic, you talked about NIST earlier, NIST have a fantastic decision tree they've just done for blockchain, which starts at the bottom, and every single answer that branches out is, have you considered a database? Have you considered a database? Have you considered just using a database? And at the bottom it goes, you may have a use case for blockchain, which is different to most of the banks I go and visit, where I ask them what's their future strategy. They go, it's AI and blockchain. Great, good, fantastic. So let's talk about what these things actually mean in reality and what you should be looking at them for. Cloud is about unimaginable scale. It's about a way to access unimaginable resources on demand in new and exciting financial models. Simple. That's basically what it is. We've spent a long time playing that game and defining that. It's not a place. It's not... It's kind of just a thing, right? It's been over-defined, but basically it's about a way of accessing unimaginable scale. It's not the answer to everything. Cloud is not a strategy, okay? Cloud first is a good way to get laughed at by anyone who knows what they're actually doing. Mobile is interesting because it gives you unprecedented reach. We're now putting power into the hands of people that never had that level of power before, and creating opportunities, which I'll talk about later, that didn't exist before. AI and ML allows us to, it says intelligence everywhere. I suppose really it's inference everywhere. Decision-making in places that we wouldn't make decisions before based on data we couldn't access before. And edge and IoT is connecting the digital and the physical. It's where those two interact. That's what makes IoT interesting. IoT is not about internet connecting my washing machine. That's really not that exciting for me. IoT for me is sprinkling several thousand low-energy Bluetooth strain gauges into the concrete mix as I'm building a bridge. And they sit there harvesting RF and eventually collect over a month or two enough RF to make one recording and blast that out over Bluetooth LE for a reading. And I've now built a bridge that talks to me. That's physical meeting digital for me. Those are the kind of exciting places. But if you look back about what innovation and invention actually is, none of these are that. Innovation and invention is very rarely someone coming up with something completely new. It's very difficult in the modern world to come up with something completely new. What you actually do is you come up with one or more things that already exist and combine them in a way that you'd never seen them combined before. That's invention. That's innovation. And so for you, the invention and innovation that's going to go on in your world is how you take these technologies and how you combine them. How you take one, mash it up with another, do something with some data you've already got, and suddenly invent a new business model. Invent a new way of pleasing your customers or your patients or your citizens or whatever it is your organization deals with. And that's the bit where it gets exciting for me. Where I get interested is where I see our customers doing new and exciting things by getting AI and ML, putting it together with some mobile stuff, doing some amazing stuff with TensorFlow, and putting some power into people's hands that you would never have dreamt of before. That's where it gets interesting. So don't look at any one of these as the answer to all your problems. But you should be looking at all of them as potential things that might make a difference in what you're doing. But the worst thing you can do is look at one of them and find out how you can ram it into your organization and make use of it, because that's not a way to build things. So our vision has very simply been about delivering any application off any cloud to any device. That's what we do. Public cloud, private cloud, edge, telco, don't really care. Is it a traditional app? Is it, I think we go back now still to DOS 6.11, I think, that we support on our VMs still. I know I've got a customer running an NT4-based system. Oh, no, a DOS-based system, actually. There is a customer using a DOS-based system on VMware Cloud for AWS for their door entry badging system, okay, because they just don't dare update it, and it works, so leave it, okay? All the way through to the latest super-duper fantastic serverless stuff, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then the any device is very interesting. When we talk about any device, it truly is any device. Where we're putting intelligence and where we're managing things is pretty, is odd now. Have you seen those Coke machines where you press, they're called the Freestyle machines. They have them in Burger Kings, they have them in Five Guys and stuff, where you can make your own disgusting mix of Coca-Cola products in a cup, right? They're all managed by VMware. They're all managed by AirWatch. If you've ever watched anything streaming on Sky, anything on any device, TV, handheld, that's all streaming off VMware vSAN and VMware SDDC. If you've ever tried not to launch a nuclear missile from a submarine, the command and control and targeting system in British nuclear submarines is running on vSphere and vSAN. That shouldn't worry you, by the way. It's quite good. It doesn't worry me, and I've been on them. My favorite story that I tell it many times, and probably apologies if you heard it before, is having a conversation with the commander on the submarine, because they run two systems, one at the front and one at the back. And I always used to wonder, he said, that's for redundancy. And I asked, if the front of your submarine's missing, mate, are you really worried about vSAN? I'd be worried about other stuff, but apparently, no, they need that. They also do some great stuff with filling it with epoxy resin by Dell OEM. So let's drill into this a little bit more, because you'll hear a lot of rhetoric at the moment about the application is the network. You'll hear people tell you that it's all about the network and applications are spreading out. Well, they are, but let me tell you how and why and what they're doing. The other thing you'll meet if you ever go and hang out in London, in Shoreditch, is you'll probably meet a guy with a beard and really tight jeans, and might be like Simon, or tell you that PaaS and serverless are the future, right? Dude. Is that right? Serverless the future, Simon?
Well, it's actually the present.
So let me tell you about that. So let's tell you about what serverless is going to do for you, and what PaaS is going to do for you, and what everything else is going to do for you, and why it's going to make sense. So we have this weird fundamental belief that one technology replaces the other. And it's because we've been brought up in a world where that happens, right? MP3s replace CDs. Flat screen TVs replace those TVs with a big bit sticking out the back, if you remember, made out of glass. So on and so forth. So surely, when platform as a service came out, that's going to replace all of IaaS, right? And surely serverless, which is what Simon will tell you, I'll get to in a minute, will replace everything. Well, the answer is no. What you're actually looking at is the chromatography of applications. Now, trust me, it's difficult to say that to an international audience, so it's hard enough saying it to audience of Bristolians, but there we go. Chromatography, you'll remember from chemistry, is where you got a drop of liquid that was a load of mixed up stuff, dropped it onto a piece of paper, and it slowly separated itself out into its constituent parts, right? Remember that? And you could see what it was made of. That's what's happening. Because now it's not just about PaaS, SaaS, and IaaS. Now you've also got to think about containers as a service and functions as a service. And not only that, you've got to think about whether you're doing them on-premises or off-premises. So actually this chromatography of applications is happening both vertically and horizontally. Both you're spreading them out this way, but also you're spreading them out that way. What you're not doing is you're not taking stuff that you did here and moving it to there. What you're doing is you're taking stuff you did here, part of stuff you did here, and moving it to there. Another part ends up here, another part ends up over there. It's the chromatography of your apps. So let's give you an example. The example I've got is a manufacturing company in Germany. They make cars. At least they still do today. We'll see how they do that in a couple of years' time when their management get out of jail. So what's happening is they are running automated factory system. They have gateways all over the wall. So a lot of people talk about intelligent edge. You heard intelligent edge earlier. Edge, and I'll talk about it later, depends on who you work for as to what it means. I'll tell you what it means to us. But in this concept, they've got some gateways that are smacked all over the factory, and they're talking to the factory. So they're tracking where cars are in the cycle by VIN. They're tracking the stock levels of each of the bits and components that are being fed in. They're tracking and instrumenting the whole thing. But what they're doing is they're running functions as a service on those gateways. Now, let's talk about what the difference is between these models. So IaaS, you rent a whole virtual machine. Containers, you rent a subdivided part of a virtual machine. That's what a container is, okay? PaaS, you turn up with your code, and the PaaS layer works out how many containers to spin up in how many virtual machines. That's Cloud Foundry. FaaS, you turn up with a line of code, and you get billed for that, okay? That's serverless. So serverless is all about what actually functions as a service, turning up and getting billed for the microseconds it took to run your particular line of code. Now that makes an awful lot of sense if you've got a line of code that only fires up once an hour or once a day, takes a reading from a sensor, and then shuts down again. I'm not going to run a whole container for that or a whole VM just to do that. So what we do now is you're seeing these edge devices being deployed, running functions as a service, usually things like either AWS Greengrass or OpenFaaS or some of those, or some of the dispatch framework we're putting together, and they run them on these devices. That is writing down to a SQL server in their data center. So I've used 2 boxes. Keep track, right? Then they got some funky people to write some container-based stuff that does an extract, transform, load out of that SQL server and writes it over here to S3 and Amazon. Once it's in Amazon, it then sits and talks with a Cloud Foundry instance that also sits running in Amazon, so that's platform as a service, that builds them dashboards for their management that they can then access on their mobile phones. Right? Have I used a few boxes yet? Now, if you go back to the old world, when all the stuff was running in one place, that would be one honking great server running Websphere or WebLogic with probably Oracle or DB2 something behind it, and it was fantastic, and it was probably made by SAP, right? Now that application has spread itself out across the infrastructure. Why? Because it's running in a more efficient way, it's running in a more scalable way, and it's running in a more flexible way. And it's cool because it allows you to do new things. Because now if you think, remember I brought all that stuff out here to S3? Well, now I can permission the S3 database because it's on public cloud so that my suppliers can come and talk to that and see what the stock levels are of the stuff that they're selling me. So they can better run their supply chain and better make sure they've got the right stuff at the right time coming to my factory so they're not overshipping or undershipping, making them more efficient. That's a modern application. You might want to add to it some image recognition, which is maybe run as functions as a service in Microsoft Azure, because Microsoft Azure actually probably is the leaders in image rec right now. So what you're doing is you're building applications based in components from all over the place. And that's what you will be doing. If you're not doing it now, you'll be doing it next year, you'll be doing it in 3 years or 5 years' time. Or you'll be buying bits of applications off ISVs that run like this. Now, if I went back to my existing WebSphere WebLogic team running on DB2 or Oracle and said, can you please now get that database and sub-permission it so I can have external people talking to it and see what's in it, and also build me some real-time connections into my factory so I can see what the data is, and can you also build me a nice dashboard on my mobile phones? You know what the response would have been from that team. That's why it's changed. So applications are changing. Where the components for those applications are running is changing. So now you're all looking at this going, oh my God, that sounds like a nightmare, right? Because it is. Because what you guys care about is operations. You guys care about making sure this stuff runs, is backed up, it's secure, it's available, it's actually going to work, because that's what your head is on the block for. And so that's what we focus on at VMware. So when we bring up this big picture, which is frankly an eye chart, and we say, okay, fine, down the bottom here, we're going to give you the ability to run virtual machines and containers, either on-premises on VMware Cloud Foundation, on hardware that you want, on VMware Cloud on AWS, either on-premises or following yesterday's announcement, off-premises or on-premises for you too, IBM Cloud, OVH Cloud, over 4,200 other public cloud providers, or you want to do stuff natively over here, we can help you do all that. Up here, we have the leading cloud management platform that allows you to make sure that we can have automation, security, operations all running across all of those continuously. What does that actually mean? Well, it means we give you globally consistent operations, because that's what we focus on, because most of us are ex-ops, across a globally consistent infrastructure. That then means that all those cool guys running cool new stuff, wearing the tight jeans with the beards, can have an open and flexible developer experience. And so that's really what we're focused on. We're focused on whether you want to do on-premises IaaS or off-premises IaaS, on-premises, all those other different things. With the Dell Technologies family, we can do all of that. Whether it's Pivotal doing a bit, we're doing bits around serverless, whether it's stuff we're doing for containers with Pivotal and PKS on-premises, off-premises, PKS as a service, doesn't really matter. What we're saying is you want to do containers, we'll do that. You want to do VMs, we'll do that. Where do you want to run them? You want to do functions as a service, on-premises or off-premises, which device do you want it to run on? Oh, platform as a service. Open source? Yeah, not a problem. Do you want that on-premises or off-premises? That's what we can do. And in turn, actually what we're helping you is we're helping you say that to your business. That's what we're focused on. So, some of the cool stuff we've announced recently, obviously VMware Cloud on AWS. That's where we're standing up the entire VMware Cloud stack on Amazon's bare metal, in Amazon's data centers. So if you want to drag and drop your VMs whilst they're running live to Amazon's data center, and then have the option to drag them back again, because you have to prove it to a regulator, we can do that. What we announced yesterday was with Amazon on stage, well, Pat, my CEO, and Andy Jassy, who runs AWS, announced, was a thing called Outposts. Outposts is where you can go to Amazon's website, click next, 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 and then Amazon will deliver hardware to your data center, or your server room, or your office, depending on what you call it. That infrastructure will be run and managed entirely by Amazon. And you can choose whether that's running native Amazon stuff or VMware Cloud on AWS. So you have the ability to click and say, can you deliver me a rack that someone else manages that runs the entire VMware stack, and I'm just going to move all my stuff to it. And I don't have to worry about patching, security, availability, any of that stuff anymore. It's somebody else's problem. Simplified operations. Project Dimension is the next step in that as well. That gives you a bit of a wider choice. That's where you say, okay, I don't want Amazon to deliver it to me, but I still want VMware Cloud on AWS, but can I have it on Dell hardware? And can Dell manage it for me rather than Amazon? Or can I have it on Lenovo hardware? Up to you. Amazon RDS. Amazon RDS is kind of an obfuscation layer they put on top of SQL databases or relational databases, allows you to have access to multiple relational databases anywhere. We now allow you to do on-premises RDS, announced with Amazon as well. And lastly, Project Magna. Project Magna is in a really bad color there, so no one can read it. But Project Magna is that sort of next level of management of operations. And there's a level after that as well that I'll tell you about. So the level we have now, standard operations, is put in a load of automation stuff, put in some alerting, and the thing will tell you if stuff's broken. And then it's down to you to work out what you should do to fix it. Project Magna is pretty much desired state management. So you'll say, okay, this is what it should look like. Can you keep it like that? So Project Magna will alert you, but it'll actively manage it. It'll actively add more storage, spin things up, bring things down, change the network, do whatever it is to maintain the desired state as maybe things change in the organization. Maybe part of your infrastructure goes down, a cloud disappears. It'll actually manage that for you. What's after that, which has a project name that changes on almost a weekly basis, I don't know why, it just does, is where we're going to get the system to work out what the desired state should be, which is really freaky stuff because you're getting into weird AI stuff, because for the system to work out how it should be configured, the system has to understand what it should be doing and why it's doing it. Now, you try explaining that to a computer, it's quite hard, okay? Right, you're meant to be a website, okay? Try and be a website, is basically what you're saying. It's quite hard, okay? So actually, that's what we're doing in the Advanced Research Division, is almost around those definitions of what is a state, what is a system, should it be maintaining. So ultimately, it should be like a self-driving car in that, we talk about the software-defined data center. Well, we'll now start talking a little bit more about the software-defined self-driving data center as Project Magna. It's doing more and more for you in an automated way. The phase after that is like getting in your self-driving car and sitting there and going, drive me to the office. And instead the car goes, no, I'm driving you to the hospital because I've just seen what's come up on your Fitbit. That's the phase after, all right? Vsphere Platinum is kind of an insight into some of the stuff we're doing with AI. It bonds together App Defense and vSphere. App Defense is a security monitoring and management tool that runs in the hypervisor that works how you work in managing your health. When you got up this morning, you didn't scan yourself for 10,000 or 150,000 known viruses. I hope you didn't, because if you did, you're properly weird, okay? What you did is you got up and went, yeah, I feel all right, a bit of a runny nose, but I'll be okay. What if your computers did that? What if your computers woke up one day and went, I feel a bit funny? That's what App Defense does. App Defense works out intelligently what the known norm is for you based on what we know about running 50 million VMs for our customers, then baselines itself with you so that your systems then know what's normal for them, and then spots when they're doing stuff that's not normal. Writing to disk in a way it's never done before, encrypting its own file system in a fun way. Things like that, right? It will spot those and alert them for you and actually deal with it. And because we're hooked into NSX, we can do some really cool, sexy stuff. And it's baselined around what you do. So you don't have that scenario where you go into the doctor, and the doctor goes, oh my God, your nose is really red. And you go, yeah, it's always like that. Thanks very much. I'm here about my arm. We've all done that with computers. You've gone troubleshooting, and instead of doing what you should do is look at the logs, you rush in and look at some of the event stuff and go, oh, that's 7. And it takes 15 minutes before the bloke who manages the server turns up and goes, yeah, it's always 7. Don't look at that. Look over here. Put that together with networking, we get adaptive microsegmentation. It means that we can actually have servers quarantining themselves off, putting their own firewalls on themselves based on what's going on in the system. Really very powerful and really very cool. So with that, what you're looking at is a system that learns the intended behavior of an application. It locks computer network using that knowledge. It continually adapts to how the change goes on in the application, and it shrinks the attack surface while making your operations simpler, which is what we focus on. Last couple of minutes, I want to talk about a couple of things. Some of you may have noticed we did an acquisition called VMware Cloud. I'm going to explain what VMware Cloud is to you now because it's quite important going forwards. What we're looking at is cloud-delivered SD-WAN. Now, no, we're not going to sell MPLS circuits or ADSL circuits or anything. I don't care. We're not going to be a 3G, 4G, 5G provider. What we are is we're going to enable you to act like a broadband company to your branches. You know when you go to your broadband provider and they just send you a box and you plug the box in and your broadband works? Wouldn't it be great if WAN was like that? Wouldn't it be great if you just sent a box to the branch and they plugged the colored red label into the red socket and then the WAN just worked? That's what this is. It's exactly that. You send out a box written on the back as a socket, MPLS or 3G or whatever, they plug it in, then everything is auto-configured and managed through the cloud. Through that, you can then do dynamic multipath optimization, you can do QoS tuning, you can do pretty much anything you like, such that at the far end, we can choose whether it's going through internet or private MPLS is up to you, divert stuff direct to the internet rather than coming back into the center. Talk to some of our customers like Rentokil, they'll tell you they've saved an absolute fortune by deploying SD-WAN to replace their existing MPLS, whatever it is they've got out there that are paying so many thousands of pounds a month for this piece of hardware to manage on the end. It's huge. But it's one of those things I don't think people are going to notice till it's crept up on them. And that all comes together into what we're doing at the edge. And what we're doing at the edge is where it gets really exciting. Because what we're doing at the edge is that we're trying to see how small we can run the SDDC. That was the challenge I set our internal guys 3 years ago. I did call the project VX NUC, because I was doing it on Intel NUCs. And we had VX Rails at the time, but I was told that I wasn't allowed to call it that publicly. Too late. So then Simon Richardson, who was the principal who was on the project, called it Nano Edge as a general project. So that's what we're doing. It's not a product, it's just a way of thinking. Now, what we're doing there is we're saying, okay, how small, how far out can we get you that consistent operating model? What's the smallest thing I can get you to still drag and drop VMs to, run containers on, do serverless on, but it's not a different management model to the existing stuff you're doing in your data center and in the cloud? And that's really where we sit out here and here with these both working with the gateways and putting nano servers in. And when I say nano servers, I'm talking really, really, really small, all right? Because what you want to do is you're going to be gathering data at the edge, making decisions in real time at the edge, but your deep learning is going to be happening back in the cloud. So, for example, the way that self-driving cars work is they execute an AI model locally, but they collect data that's sent back to a machine learning that then educates and builds itself to push out new AI models to all the cars. So those Teslas don't do machine learning in the car, they do AI in the car. Machine learning is done in the center. But what we need to do is have a lot of power at the edge to execute those AI models. The Drive PX2 unit in a Tesla alone is the equivalent of 150 MacBook Pros in terms of processing power, just to execute the feed from 8 cameras and some sensors. So we're working, how do we get that smaller and smaller and more manageable? So one of the answers to that is why we announced ESXi on ARM. Not because ARM's getting big in the data center, it is for some people, but because ARM is really big on the edge. And so I'll leave you with an idea of what we're looking at the moment. Imagine the just certified, for Vsphere at least, Supermicro E200 box. Google it. It's about this big. It's really cute, okay? It's running a Xeon D6 core. You can put about 32 gig of RAM in it. It's got a 10 gig on the back of it, and a 1 gig, right? And it supports NVMe as well, so we can run vSAN in it. Yes, right? So you get 2 of those. You stick them together with gaffer tape, and you put a 10 gig crossover on the back of it. Now I've got a 2-node vSAN. But I need a witness, don't I, right? For those of you who understand VLANs, I need a witness node. Well, what if I could run the witness node on Raspberry Pi? Yes, you can, because of ESXi on ARM, and we demoed it at VMworld. So now you've got 2 nodes, a Raspberry Pi stuck on the top, which we can use as the vSAN witness. Someone's maybe selling that to you at a fixed price per month as an operating model. You can put it in every single branch you've got, or as we're working with one organization, every single ambulance. But you can manage it the same way that you manage the servers in your data center. You can push VMs out to it, back it up, control it, secure it using NSX, do all those things in the same way. So when we talk about this vision of delivering from any cloud, we mean it. Amazon, 4,200 partner clouds, and management in Azure. Delivering any type of application, PaaS, SaaS, FaaS, it doesn't matter. We have the ability to support that. And then truly delivering it to any device, even running the hybrid cloud and the SDDC in that edge device. That's what we're focused on at VMware. So hopefully, you've come with us this far. Let's see what we can do next. Thank you.